Good question, Nathan. I don't know is the honest answer to that. I think first of all, you have to remember as well, they're very much in the honeymoon period of being on a Lions tour. They're quite well versed in dealing with COVID over the course of the last 15 months. So all of these circumstances, as much as it's new on this Lions tour, it's not particularly new to them. There's incessant testing. There's been games called off, for almost every player I would imagine involved in that squad. So, it's all about adjusting to the circumstances. But as things go on and as games potentially get cancelled and guys don't get the game time that they would have envisaged, they aren't having the experience that all previous Lions tours have and previous Lions players have talked about it being the pinnacle of their career. When they, particularly these new Lions, when they come in and realize this isn't the pinnacle of playing rugby, this is a slog, this is a battle. And I don't care what great team spirit you manage to build up through the success in the games, it's very hard to keep 36 or 37 players happy where there's no fun, there's no real getting out and seeing the country, seeing the supporters, feeling the energy from them. I don't know what their days off entail, whether they're going to be able to go off and play golf or do, shark diving or all that carry on. That's part of touring South Africa. That's part of the experiential piece. And that has such a huge impact on the overall happiness of a squad, of people enjoying themselves, having fun, enjoying one another's company. And as I said, they're only week one into traveling over there. They've had a couple of weeks in Jersey. It's week 3, 4, and 5, particularly 4 and 5, when the test matches come around and players realize they're not in the reckoning, that they're going to really come up against it. And I wonder, on the basis of that, does Warren Gatland then have his hand forced a little bit where he's going to have to pick very different test teams over the course of the 3 weeks just to keep all players on side? Because if you start losing 5 or 10 players because they're not involved in the test setup, that's such a massive negative knock-on consequence to the rest of the squad. So does he need to keep things fresh and through the first couple of test matches, irrespective of what the results are in them? Maybe you'll have to look at that approach as being something he might have to go to.
It does feel as though already they can't afford another 24 hours like the one that they have just had. And when you listen to Ian Henderson after the match saying that 2 hours before kickoff the players are sitting in their hotel rooms, they don't know if the match is going to take place, they don't know what players are going to be available if the match can take place, and that all of that just developed over the next half an hour. There has been a press conference this afternoon. This is the Lions managing director, Ben Calverley. So he's been talking about the lengths that they're going to in order to allow the tour proceed safely.
Well, look, what I would say is that it is a challenge, right? This is a challenge. I'm definitely not going to sit here and say that this is easy, but we are absolutely determined to make it work, and we've put measures in place to make it work. So we're living in a very strict biosecure environment where we're governed by very strict protocols. We have a medical advisory group in place that has independent virologists and infectious disease specialists that advise us on what we can and can't do. This is the same for the Lions and the Springbok camp. We're tested frequently, minimum 3 times a week. We have no interactions with the general public. We're playing in far fewer venues than would originally have been the case. And of course, we don't have fans in the venues. So we're doing everything we possibly can to make sure that this tour will go ahead, and we are determined to make it a success.
They're clearly taking every possible precaution, yet still one member of the management team tested positive. They had 4 close contacts yesterday, 2 of whom were players, 2 staff. He was saying in the press conference that they immediately isolated that group. But then, having tested everybody else, another player tested positive. It seems like it was a very low-level positive, and because of that, there were 8 more close contacts. They're hopeful that that player, having been retested, it came back negative, will come back negative again, which will mean they're able to play, and all the close contacts will be able to play. But once again, Warren Gatland will probably be waiting until the day of the game before he can actually select a starting 15. Austin Healy, you mentioned, was saying maybe they should just bring the Test series back to the UK. Tommy Bull was on with us last night building up, saying something similar. Could they actually just look to flying everybody back to the UK and play the 3 Test series back in the UK? Is that something they should be thinking about?
I think it's got to be taken as a possible viable option, just on the basis that, you know, if the Test series isn't finished, it potentially could bankrupt either the Lions or indeed the Springboks. So when you're looking at the severity of those outcomes, you have to take on board every option available to you. And you know, they couldn't manage to get the series played in the UK when that was touted, you know, 3-4 months ago. There was talk about, you know, no one would underwrite it. That's my understanding of it. But anyway, it was decided that South Africa was going to be safe enough to come and play it in. That's clearly transpired to not be the case. So if they could guarantee, you know, the 2 teams to travel back to the UK, you know, do their 10-day quarantine and potentially play a Test series and guarantee, you know, full stadia. I don't know, logistically, can you even turn things around in that short space of time? And Twickenham, you know, people are talking, Austin was talking about, you know, Twickenham, Cardiff and Murrayfield, but you have to remember that these things are years in the making. They can't just be flipped and turn around in no time whatsoever. So as much as it's easy for us to, you know, shout options and ideas, I think the reality is I'm not sure whether they can be achieved. But at the moment, there's huge skepticism as to whether you're going to get to see 3 Test series against South Africa in South Africa under the current circumstance of what's happened in the last week. So I would imagine that conversation is maybe taking place just to test the water as to whether that, you know, could happen if it continues going the way it currently is.
It must be putting an enormous mental strain on the players, and one that they can't get a release from in the way that you normally would on a Lions tour, which you just outlined, because they don't know where this virus is going. And yes, while the players are young, fit, healthy men, we have heard any amount of stories of long COVID, of the effect it can have on people. And also, not everybody in that camp is a young, fit, healthy man. There are plenty of people behind the scenes who are in their 50s, in their 60s, who are now in a part of the world where this virus is running rampant. So I'm sure it's a very, very nervous time for everybody who's in the camp.
It undoubtedly is. And I think you've seen it with other sports and the impact that, you know, long time away from family and friends in restrictive circumstances, what it's done to their mental health. And I think, you know, specifically, you're probably talking about the cricketers are the ones that seem to be impacted significantly in the past. I would have huge concerns, I really would, about the mental state of the players after 5 or 6 weeks of doing this, and the uncertainty. And see, we're getting to watch 80 minutes at the end of, you know, once on a Wednesday or Tuesday or Wednesday, and once on a Saturday. Think about all that other time in between, and there's only so much time you can train as well, and players will be at their happiness expressing themselves and getting to play and train with you know, with the best players in the UK and Ireland. Something very exciting about Lions training. But the reality is everything else is downtime or time away from the game, and that is as important a part to play in a Lions tour as the training and the preparation piece. So I would really fear for the mental state of the players, of the staff as well, the circumstances that they're finding themselves in. Because you're right, it does feel a little bit like they're the pawns. But the reality is, and I don't want to be sitting on the fence on both sides of the argument, but the reality is, if this doesn't happen, is it catastrophic to the Lions in 4 years' time and 8 years' time? Potentially. So I can see why it's being forced through, even though morally it even seems wrong with with what's going on in South Africa.
It'll be interesting if there are any injuries, how easy they will find it to call players up who are still back in Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, looking on at this thinking, actually, yes, I might have dreamed of playing for the Lions, but maybe I'm better off staying at home.
Yeah, you're not going to turn it down though, Nathan, no matter what. Even if you've been a 2 or 3 time
Right.
Lion and you get called, it's too big an honor, and it's too prestigious to feel as though you can pass something up like that. And sorry, I'm only asking from my own point of view. If that had been the case, I would have jumped at the opportunity of going down and trying to force my way into a test team. But it's bananas where this has gone to and how it's been allowed progress the way it has, and it feels like they can't get off this runaway train at the moment. That you're almost waiting day by day for a kind of change of route or a different eventuality, and that's why it makes it so farcical at times. The fact they're playing the Sharks, twice in 1 week is ridiculous. But yet they need the game time, so I can understand why they're doing that as well. But I think there's a lot more to play out in this, obviously with regard to games and the potential for cancelled games, but also what's this tour is going to look like in 2 weeks' time. I know it's 16 days to the first test match. In 2 weeks' time, where are these players at, where they've 2 more weeks of being stuck in a Joburg hotel or a Cape Town hotel, and they've told all the stories they have, they've made all the flat whites that they can have, and they've done all the fines that possibly can without actually having any crack. I would really worry about where it's going to end up.